Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving me an excuse to get out of my glorified pajamas for the day. So I am so excited to be here with Kwon. He and I will be presenting the webinar today on Social Impact 101. And it's really funny when you work at the Centre for Social Impact, because there's just an assumption, I think, when everyone starts working. There's no real conversation explicitly about what social impact is. And it's just an assumption that we're doing good work. And it's funny when people sort of say, so what is social impact? Like, that's a really excellent question. And then the time passes too much before anyone can actually ask the question. So it's good to know exactly what social impact is when you're working in it. So I've thought a lot about this, obviously, because of the nature of the work. And here is the definition we use on the website. So we define social impact at CSI as the net effect of an activity on a community and the well-being of individuals and families. And I think, and Joe, I'll bring Joe into the conversation in 1 second, I think he'd agree that when you're working in social impact, the key is that the social gain has to be just as important as the financial gain, but in many cases, the social gain is more important. So obviously, if you're working in a not-for-profit, then the social gain, the positive net effect of your activity is more important than any kind of financial gain that you might achieve. And so that lends itself to so many different applications and contexts, because if you are just trying to make a positive social gain, then that can come in so many forms. And that's the theme of today, that if you study social impact or if you work in social impact, you can wear many different masks and have many different titles, and we'll go into that a little bit more. Now, our undergraduate course, which is where I met Joe, is COM 1000 Creating Social Change, and I had the honour of being the course authority for that course. It's a general education course at UNSW, so anyone who's an undergraduate can take that from any faculty. And you'll see here on the screen that we've got we've got the social change process that we use in that course. So the topics that we cover are things like systems thinking, blueprint for change, utilising systems tools, and strategies, collaborations, and measuring impact. Now, my favourite part of this webinar is going to be the story of how Joe and I came to meet. And at this point, I'd like to welcome you, Joe, to the webinar and introduce you. Thanks for being here. I was wondering maybe if you could share how you and I first met and a bit about your background.
Yes. So, hi, my name is Kwon. I'm the founder and director for Convict Fitness, otherwise known as ConFit, where we're a fitness enterprise where we help formerly incarcerated inmates to do what they love best, which is training, and to give back to society through fitness. I just want to take you to beyond the context before we met, Ali. Just before we met, it was about 2 months before I came out, so 2 months after I came out of prison. And I was working on a construction site, and I was actually living on the construction site because I didn't have a place to go. And, I was thinking, man, who's going to take me seriously? And the only thing that was driving me at that point was I wanted to educate myself, because, when I was in prison, for those who don't know me, sorry, I spent 9 years in prison for directing a criminal enterprise for selling large commercial supply of drugs. And when I was in prison, I realized the common denominator for why everyone was there was the lack of education, and I wanted to change my life around. And I ended up meeting a billionaire cellmate who taught me accounting, and I got into UNSW through for accounting. First year, during the first year, I changed my major because accounting wasn't something that I wanted to do. But just before we met, Ali, I was living on a construction site, and I was really down, thinking, I don't think society is really going to take me seriously. But I really wanted to educate myself. So it was the first subject. I got into UNSW, and it was the first subject, creating social change. I'm thinking, what is creating social change? To be honest with you, I didn't even know what social impact was at that time. I honestly took that course because I thought it was like because I was taking a business course, and I thought it was like sort of like a business ethics course or something like that. So I took it. The first lecture, I met Ali, and she's talking about recidivism rates, disadvantaged societies in Australia. She's talking about prisons and homelessness. And, you know, just a month before I was homeless myself. I was like, oh my God, this subject is right up my alley. I know a lot about this subject, right? So I actually waited and I hunted down Ali. She was hurrying out to go somewhere. And I was like, oh, excuse me, can I just talk to you for a sec? And I told her about my situation and how I just came out of prison. And the first thing Ali goes, are you even a student in my class? That's the first thing she said. I was like, yeah, I'm a first year student.
No, because you said to me, I've just come out of prison and I was just listening to you talk and I was wondering if I could talk to you. And I was like, hold on a second, are you in this course? Are you enrolled in the course?
Yeah, and then I was just telling Ali about this vision that I had of creating a fitness enterprise to help other inmates to not just educate themselves in the fitness industry, but for them to be able to give back and to be taken seriously by society. And throughout taking the course, you know, I started figuring out what social impact actually means. You know, it is to be profitable, but at the same time, you know, you have a social mission, a cause that you wanna like a social mission that you wanna accomplish. And for me at that time was reducing recidivism. Something that was close to my heart was, you know, even when I was in prison, I used to not coach, but lead a group of guys into fitness because that's what I love doing. And I'm still doing what I love doing. And the thing that I saw a lot was, you know, I did 9 years in prison, and throughout that time, that group of guys that I used to train with, many of them would get released from prison and come back and join my fitness group again. And I'll be like, why are you back? And they're like, you know, they couldn't hold down a job, or, you know, they weren't skilled enough, or, you know, they couldn't be taken seriously. A lot of the jobs that they did do wasn't fulfilling jobs. You know, they wake up in the morning and drag themselves out into some job that they didn't like. And the option to go back to crime is pretty enticing if you know, you're doing something every day that you hate doing, and that's the only option that you have. And they do get depressed and they fall into the habit of drugs again, and they relapse, and they were coming back to prison. And I was thinking, how do I stop this? You know, I don't like, to be honest with you, jail is not a nice place to be in, and I don't like to see the guys that I love coming back into prison. I was like, and I could see myself in their shoes as well. I was like, what happens if I go out and then society doesn't accept me, and then I end up doing something, I'll end up going back into crime again and coming back to jail. And I just didn't want that to happen, and that was lingering in my mind constantly. And I just thinking, how do I do this fitness thing? I train every day. I use fitness to better myself, psychologically and physically, in such a negative place. You know, that was my way of escapism. So how do I use this when I get out? So I just decided, you know, I'm just gonna start with what I know. So I had no money. So
Joe, before you go through the whole story, so we're going to take everyone through your case study using the Con 1000 principles that we used. Yeah. But can I just jump in and say that after I met you, I then went back to the CSI office, and I was so inspired because I thought, here is someone who has turned their life around and thought, I am going to have a second chance. And I loved the fact that you were trying to make a positive contribution, not only to change your own life, but the lives of other people. And that's at the heart of social impact, to look at a complex social problem. And in your case, the complex social problem that you were identifying was recidivism, so reoffending after being in jail. And that was so strangely, that was one of the main case studies I used in that lecture that you were in. So I went back to the CSI office and I went to talk to my supervisor, so Associate Professor Leanne. I went and said, Leanne, I just met this guy. He's so inspiring. He's one of the students, and he's doing this and he's doing that. And then Lindsay McKee, who is working in the national executive for CSI, we got her in as well, and came up. They cooked up this great idea of you partnering with CSI MBA students, so to give them an actual practical project to work on. So that was an amazing idea of theirs.
How ConFit started. So at that time, ConFit was just an idea. You know, I was just running a group of guys in a park out in the West, and I had no idea what to do. I didn't know what. I knew I wanted to reduce recidivism. At that time, it wasn't recidivism. I just wanted to help the boys. That's all. I wanted to help myself and help the boys that I knew inside prison. But then after taking the subject, I started learning more about recidivism. I started studying more about, the impacts that are like measuring impact and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I was on this MBA program, and one of the students of the MBA program, Brett, he was part of this large boot camp that he was a client of this boot camp, and he actually introduced me to the founder of Evolution to Wellbeing, and he coached me to be able to run a fitness business.
Wow.
So that started from like the MBA students. So you introduced me to Lindsay McKee, CSI.
Yeah.
Then one of the students at CSI introduced me to another guy who had a large outdoor fitness business, and he actually coached me to be able to run what ConFit is today.
Yeah. So this is what social impact is. So you're there with a great idea and a desire and intention to help and make a difference. And so then if someone's wanting to work in social impact, they can be a part of that. They can be a part of growing that. And so you can see here in the slide that this is just the roadmap for the course for Con 1000, but we talk about complex social problems and then what you need to do in response to those complex social problems. So recidivism is a perfect example of a complex social problem sectors are doing, and then you design your social innovation and work out where you can collaborate. So why I thought you'd be so great for today is because you have gone through all of these steps, and whether it was a conscious process or some kind of amazing intervention or these people that you met, it's really fantastic to see as a social impact case study how you've gone through all these steps. So the first one is the complex social problem you were trying to address, as we've said, was recidivism. So you wanted to stop reoffending. So you need to then bring in systems thinking. Now, a simplistic analysis of recidivism is something along the lines of, well, people are reoffending after they go to jail, after they come out of jail, so therefore punishments must not be strict enough or severe enough. So we need to make punishments more severe. We need to make jail sentences longer. But as you could identify, having gone through it, and this is why your story is so powerful, you knew that the reason that people are reoffending is really linked to community, because when you come out, people aren't welcoming you with open arms. There's not a lot of employment opportunities, and even if you do have a job, you don't have community. So there's lots of different, you need to take that systems approach where you realize that there's a lot of interrelated factors playing into why people are choosing to reoffend. And then with your sector analysis, you looked at what's being done, because again, you're part of the system. So you had this powerful perspective. You were able to say, well, I know what's being done because I'm actually in this system and it's happening to me. So then you were able to go through the actors. And sorry, I'm going through this really quickly because I'm really aware we want to get to Q&A at the end and there's so much that you want to say. And then we did all the system. So were you able to use Con 1000 and your MBA experience?
So what happened was, look, prison sentence itself it's not going to change. You're doing the time, no matter how easy you try to make it, you're plugged away from society, and you're there away from your family, your loved ones, and away from pretty much stripped away from freedom, right? So it's not what they're doing inside prison, it's about outside. And what ConFit is trying to do, one of our main mission is, our main mission is to reduce recidivism. How do we do that? Is to break down society's negative criminal stereotyping on former inmates and to create opportunities for these guys. And that's one of the things that that's the mission that I'm trying to accomplish right now, is that why I'm so transparent with my story is I want people to understand that not everyone in prison are bad people. Look, there are some monsters in there, but majority of the time, people are from really, really negative and toxic environments that they grew up in.
Which is the system's view in and of itself.
Exactly. So I always ask people, some people have had nice lives growing up, sheltered lives, but imagine something like a little tweak in your life. Imagine, growing up, you met your first love who was addicted to heroin or something, and then you ended up using it for the first time, and then your life goes downhill. Imagine someone in your family dies, or imagine you grew up in a community of drugs or violence, or your parents who are drug runners or whatever that may be. But imagine that you just take yourself out of your current situation, and in your upbringing, a little tweak just a little tweak could send you onto the other side, you know, and that's what I want people to realize, that people in jail are not bad people. They just lack the opportunity. They just went down, you know, they're unfortunate to go down the wrong path, you know, but there are.
So, sorry, for anyone who's sort of listening to you and getting inspired and feeling, oh, how can I work in this or study in this? I'm going to jump to the courses and then we're going to come back, because then I want to finish, before we go to Q&A, I want to finish on you telling more about your story and where you've ended up. So let's just talk now about people who are inspired and want to learn more. So obviously CSI is a collaboration of 3 universities. So there's UNSW, Swinburne and the University of Western Australia. If you want to study social impact, it can lead to so many different careers. So it can lead to careers not-for-profits and government departments, which I think is sort of the stereotype of social impact. But you can also work in consulting and startups, social enterprises like Joe's. So that's the description of your organisation. But impact investment and other business organisations, you can be working in finance and be working in social impact at the same time. It's not something that is fringe or hippie or not-for-profit or just pro bono. I think that was the idea of social impact, the perception of it in the past, whereas now business is changing. The social role of business is transforming so much, and along with it, career opportunities in social impact. And then you can work in community groups, the public sector, and also educational institutions like Centre for Social Impact. So for anyone who's wanting to understand more, please go to our website. And again, know that these courses are offered at UNSW, Swinburne and UWA in various forms. There's graduate diplomas. You don't have to commit to an entire bachelor degree or master's degree. There's also graduate diplomas and graduate certificates. So now what's exciting is about the people that you've met. You've alluded to that, and the opportunities that have opened up since you started ConFit. So you went through the MBA program, you met a student of the MBA program who then introduced you to someone from Evolution Fitness who coached you in running a fitness business. So where are you now?
So, in COM 1000, one of the main emphasis I still remember is about cross-sector collaboration. I didn't even know what that was, right? And the more you think about it, I think things start to happen because you're putting a lot of emphasis on that. So I was thinking, how do I connect with other sectors? And what I wanted to do was, how do I connect with the prison? How do I go back to where everything all started? I know it's very hard to deal with the correctional centers, but what I wanted to do, and this was an idea that formed while I was doing your course, was, okay, for me to be able to scale ConFit, I need to be able to bring more ex-inmates in. How am I going to do that? And what I'm trying to do is to have create a direct pipeline from prisons when they get out, whether it's prisons or parole officers, for inmates to come out to be able to get coached and trained up to be trainers if they want to be, right? So I've also started up a not-for-profit. We'll go into that later. But yeah, so what happened was, I was also, when I was lucky enough to become a trainer for Google. And at that time, Google didn't know about my past. So I was a fitness trainer for Google. And
was that through ConFit, or is that just you as an individual?
That was through Evolution. So Evolution, so that all the chain of events happened. So while you introduced me to one person, I met another person, and so Evolution to Wellbeing introduced me to Google, ended up becoming a trainer at Google. Now Google is helping me to be able to scale my impact as well. So not only am I helping their employees to get fit, so they're putting me onto platforms such as Google Talks for me to be able to talk about recidivism rates and about fitness and how fitness is linked to the mind and the body. And what I'm trying to do with XMS, and to provide that opportunities and to break down that negative stereotyping. And so I'm meeting people who have their power or their abilities to be able to help. And that's what social impact is. If you have the ability, if you have that skill set, you should be able to use that to make that impact. For myself, I wasn't really educated. As you can tell, I'm talking with you, Ali, and you're so eloquent with your words. And I'm not educated, but I know what I'm good at is I'm good at fitness, and that's what I'm using. promote social impact.
I think you're underestimating yourself there, Joe. I think you're you're an amazing communicator. And the first time I met you, you were so compelling. And do you know what comes across with you from the very beginning is your passion. So when you walked up and you said, I want to do this, you're so determined and you know what you want to do. And I think that cross-sectoral collaboration can't be underestimated either, because I think there's this tendency with social impact for us to say, oh, well, that's the domain of government, or well, that's the domain of not-for-profits, and business can't go out of its lane because business has a sole responsibility to its shareholders, and that's it. And so we're moving away. Well, there's a strong argument to say that we're moving out of a shareholder theory view towards the stakeholder theory view, where we're more answerable to the community as one of our stakeholders in business. And so that's changing everything in every sector. And increasingly, all the different sectors are wondering how they can open up to each other and collaborate in order to make the greatest social impact. So what about some unanticipated outcomes for ConFit? So where are you now?
So obviously coronavirus. So I was running outdoor fitness boot camps, and with the social gathering rules, we couldn't run outdoor classes. So I had to pivot my whole business online, and that was a blessing in disguise. I quickly pivoted online. I had no idea what Zoom was, and I had to learn quickly. And I'm running online classes now, and now I'm able to scale and tell my message to people from across the world. I've got guys training with me from Singapore, from England, from South Korea, from Japan. They're all signing up to train with me, and and they love the message, and they really want to help out. And it's quite inspiring to me as well that people from across the world want to help out with the situation in Australia.
And on that, so there was an article about you in the Australian Financial Review. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so they thought it was pretty funny because everyone was isolated in the house, and overnight I became an expert in confined space bodyweight training. No one could go to the gym. I was like, when I was in my prison cell, I used to formulate all these different routines, and I was like, I had no idea that this would actually become a thing.
I don't think anyone did.
I was marketing myself as, hey, I know a thing or two about confined space bodyweight training, and people getting really intrigued about it. And then the story somehow leaked to AFR, and then they wanted to do a story on how to keep fit in time of ISO.
Oh, you've got such an infectious spirit. I can understand why people want to know more about you. So then, can you tell us about some of the work you've done in the community?
Yes, so one of the areas that I run is Redfern, and why I picked Redfern was because of its rich history. Not so bright sometimes, but it does have a deep culture, deep history, and it's changing. And what I want to do with my mission was to bring together two societies. So, when you look at Redfern, you see the public housing blocks, and then you look on the other side, you've got all these like rich houses, and it's like, how do I bring these two together? And I'm training at Redfern Park, and that's my mission, right? So to get former inmates to become trainers, and to bring the rest of society to be able to train with us. So
on that vision, sorry, has word gotten out in the prison that's happening, that's a pipeline for people?
People are writing to me from prison saying, hey, I want to be part of ConFit when I get out. It's like, yeah, definitely. Just recently,
you're like a beacon of hope.
Yeah, just recently I had a guy that I used to train with, that he was a refugee from Iran, and he unfortunate that he was in a situation where he had to do an armed robbery because he was living on the streets, and they were about to deport him. And ConFit was able to represent him as a reference, saying, yep, he's going to come on board as one of the trainers, or even just to be part of the support network. And they actually granted his approval to stay here, so he's not getting deported back. And definitely he has changed his life around. I can see that. And for ConFit to be able to do that, that was really amazing. And I thought, ConFit, there's a long way to go for us. But I think we're at a good start. So even the community events, as you can see on the photo. So I invited all the local Aboriginal community down as well, Indigenous community down. And we had an Indigenous drug and alcohol court up from Central Coast that came down who did the traditional dance for us as well. And it's all in the name of fitness and mental health. And these things are correlated. So we were promoting mental health, and all the funds went to a local charity called Odyssey House. So they're an addiction prevention center. So all the money that we raised for the fitness competitions all went to them as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned a not-for-profit. What's that?
So I'm starting a not-for-profit called Pathways by ConFit. So what I realized was when I got out, a lot of the skills that I lacked was some literacy skills, financial literacy skills. I knew how to make money. I didn't know how to save money. I didn't know how to invest money. And tech literacy skills. So we're bringing in people from different sectors who specialize in this to be able to coach and upskill former inmates to be able to do what they want to do, not just go into one industry, or go into laboring or whatever. So if they want to become, want to work in sales and they're really good at selling, they have raw natural selling abilities, but they don't have the technical abilities, we're going to coach them up to be able to, upskill them and to be able to send them on their way to go into the workforce and to do things that they want to do. Yeah, even if they want to become a trainer, and then to upskill them to become a trainer. And the biggest thing was, ConFit's doing this because we've been there, we've done that. A lot of the guys on my team have come out of prison, have experienced what it takes to actually change your life around to be able to reintegrate back into society. And at the end of the day, it's all around mindset. So that's the component that we deliver, and PwC is on board. We're trying to get Google on board. They still haven't agreed, but UNSW is helping out as well. So it's still work in progress at the moment, but keep an eye out for it. So we're establishing this up very soon.
Pathways by ConFit. So I want to get everyone else involved. Rhonda, is it a good time now for the Q&A?
Yes, always a good time for Q&A.
I feel like I'm keeping Jo all to myself. I feel like everyone else would like to ask some questions.
Sure thing. So have you finished your presentation now? Do you want to turn off the screen share and then we can see some other
Yeah,
people?
Sure. Yeah.
So question for Jo from Molly, one of our students at Swinburne. Have those in your program been more receptive to you than other fitness programs in prisons because of your understanding of their experience? And going on from that, how important do you think representation is in general?
So I don't know if there's, hi Molly, by the way. I don't think there's that many fitness programs that are run from prison. It's just guys, like a group of guys training. So there was nothing official. Definitely guys are more receptive because you can resonate. Through my social media, I always get posts going, hey Jo, I remember you training in the yard, and I remember jumping in with you one stage, and the guys saying, I've seen you training in the yard before, and it's inspired me to train again. And I think it does that thing, same thing for people in the army, you've been to the army together, these guys bond. I think it's the same thing for guys coming out of prison. You have a MIN number, you can straight away bond. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, cool. Another question for Jo, and then I'll get to some other general questions. Interesting one from Chris. I think I know the answer, but did Jo start studying while in prison, and how did studying rate versus fitness training fulfilling and using in the time usefully?
So I'll start with the fitness side first. So in prison, I used fitness as a way it was like a mental hack. It was a way for me to escape the realities of my current negative situation. So obviously, yeah, I had a lot of time on my hands, but for me, fitness was a gateway for other areas of my life. You make that commitment every day to go out and train. Sometimes I was training twice a day, and that commitment, every day, it was raining, cold, whatever outside, I made it my mission to go out and get my training done that day. And that kind of like strengthens other areas of your life. That's a psychological hack as well. So even with when I wanted to study, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And then in there they talk about how accounting is the language of business. So I went to the library, and then I got myself a university accounting book. And the moment I opened it, I thought I was reading hieroglyphics. I started sweating and going, what is this? You know, like I don't understand a single thing. But I really wanted to educate myself. I ended up meeting a billionaire in the yard. I didn't know he was a billionaire at that time. And I heard that he was an accountant, and I just approached him, and he was having a real bad time because he's not really that criminal type. He's more of like a white collar criminal, and you know, people were really trying to extort him for money and stuff. And he thought I was trying to do the same thing to him. And yes, I approached him and I said, listen, like, I heard you're an accountant. Can you teach me accounting? And then he was a little bit hesitant. And I said, look, I'll give you protection with all the guys. And at the time he had a heavily medicated cage fighter as a cellmate who was choking him out every night. And I said, look, I'll do you a deal, get you out of that cell from that lunatic, and I'll get you into the cell with me, and then you can coach me or teach me accounting every night. And not only did he teach me accounting every night, he taught me about the value of business and about self-worth. And he goes, you know what, you're not really stupid. I think you can do this. And he was the first person to actually believe in me in regards to academics. So I was like, you know what, I could do this. So that's why I wanted to get into uni. I was like, this is a challenge. So I applied for correspondence uni, which they don't have right now. They've got rid of it, which is a shame. But at that time, they were doing some correspondence university stuff. And I was able to get good enough marks to be able to transfer into UNSW. Yeah, so I received that letter while I was in prison, that my acceptance to UNSW, and I broke down like a little baby.
I bet you did. Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Interestingly, now we do offer courses by correspondence or online because of COVID. So everyone is welcome to join our online courses. I might jump to Ali now because Joe is a great example of social impact in action, but other people are interested in how if they don't want to start a social enterprise or a not-for-profit, how can they get involved themselves in having social impact? So a question from Karen, who's just applied for our grad cert at Swinburne, very exciting. So she's asked, how can mature, experienced people connect and lend their skills in the sector? Not all of us want to set up a new business, as inspiring as it is, but we may have really useful skills to apply.
So thank you for that question. There's so many different things we can do now. I think a lot of it starts with an intention. So you can be working in a company, like a traditional for-profit company, and have an idea for how you can do something just a little bit better, a little bit more ethically, for example. So we had even at UNSW, so they put out their procurement policy for review by all the staff. Now that sounds so boring. That sounds like an email that you go, oh, procurement policy, fascinating. But some colleagues and I actually read it and we thought, hey, this is an opportunity to put ethical procurement and environmental procurement onto the UNSW policy. So we actually put in a submission, went to a couple of meetings, and now we have ethical procurement at UNSW. Now that's an example. Obviously UNSW is not a for-profit, but you can just have an idea. You can say, you know what, maybe we should use the social enterprise caterer for our next event rather than the one that we've always used. Or maybe we could get our toilet paper from the social enterprise rather than just your standard. I think it's a mindset, so it's about thinking differently. So that's for someone who's, whatever you're doing, whether you're a consumer, whether you are someone who's working already in your organisation, it's about thinking differently. But also there are organisations out there whose primary purpose is for good, for social good. And so it's not about necessarily starting your own business. It's about aligning yourself or working for organisations like that. So you can be in comms. So Rhonda is working in comms at the Centre for Social Impact. Rhonda is working in social impact. You can be in a voluntary capacity. There are lots of volunteering. You can work in a top law firm in the pro bono section. Like there are so many different ways that this can be expressed. Rhonda, would you add anything to that?
Absolutely. And a few people have commented and said, how can I make this impact in a company that its core purpose isn't to have a social impact? But there's I think the small ways are really important. And I agree, you can work for a not-for-profit or a social enterprise, or you can volunteer for them. So I think everyone can have an impact, which sounds a bit cliche sometimes, but you just need to think about, how do I apply my skills to have to have the impact.
Yeah, and it's also about being creative. I think cross-sectoral collaboration is the key here. So it's not about having preconceived ideas about what government does or what business does or what not-for-profits do. It's about saying, how can we all come together? What resources does this organisation have that this other one might not? Like, what what resources does Google have that Joe might have that they could collaborate? That is a question that not a lot of people ask, because we're sort of constrained by these old ideas of siloed sectors. Or even, this is what I love about Kwon 1000, it's a general education course, so anyone from any faculty can come in. You've got people from medicine, people from law, people from engineering, people from education, people from PR. They're all working together on this course. And so that in itself is one of the key themes that we're trying to teach. So I think it's asking different questions, having a mindset of social gain, and wondering how you can apply your skills in a way to achieve positive social impact.
And there's a whole global community around social impact as well. And one thing that I started to realize after I took the course, I had no idea about it, but even like consumers will not do business with a certain business if they're not linked to a social cause. Normal corporates are starting to understand that now, so they're aligning themselves with a lot of the CSR things as well. Whether they want
that's a big one that I didn't talk about, corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, whether they want to do it for their benefit or not, but there's a huge community out there.
There definitely is. And I would highly recommend people who are new to it to sign up to different newsletters and follow different organisations on social, like CSI, as we share a lot of content that then connects you to other people or other organisations.
And as Joe's demonstrated, and my experience has shown, sometimes you don't even know what you'll be doing until you meet certain people. So, for example, I gave a lecture at UNSW, Joe comes up to me, we meet, and then now it starts this ripple effect. Similarly, last year, and this is the webinar I did last week, I was approached by Randwick Primary School saying we want to do a social impact leadership program. Now, I couldn't have anticipated those interactions, those meetings, but they've led to some really rich social impact work. So I think sometimes it's about not having necessarily a really fixed idea of what you'll do, but that intention is key.
Mm. And Ashara, thank you. She shared the website for volley.com.au, and there's loads of websites, like there's Seek Volunteer, there's state-based and territory-based volunteering organisations, so take a look at those too. Back to Joe. A lot of people are saying, this is really interesting, that you should start a podcast. And Ali and I were talking yesterday, and we were saying, Joe could be a movie. We could do a movie. So you should get on a podcast, maybe, Joe. Set that up.
That is in the making.
Okay.
But we've got some of the former inmates that are part of ConFit who are not trainers, but some of them have the gift of the gab, so you're gonna laugh.
Okay, make sure you tell us about that. I'll promote it for you. So a lot of people are asking around how you measure your impact. So do you do any outcomes measurement work? What's the story with that?
So it's a little bit difficult with that one, but so our main way to measure things is, number one, obviously, it's pretty obvious, amount of guys that are not returning to prison or reoffending. We have close ties with the guys, and I'm very, very involved in their lives. Around how they're feeling, pretty much. So I'm measuring on, okay, when you first came out, like, what was your worth? What did you feel about yourself when you came out? And now you're part of something greater. How do you feel now as you're progressing? Do you feel that you're more connected with society? So it's more of like a survey that I do to measure that impact. And later on, as you become more profitable, I'll be like, okay, how much money are you making out of this as well? So that's could be another measurement. There's a lot of different measurements that we could use, but at the moment, the main thing is, okay, you're not going back to prison. We're not going to increase that recidivism rate number. So
and I guess homelessness as well would be another key, like how they're all sleeping.
Yeah. So pretty much a lot around mindset, mental health is a big one. A lot of the times when guys come out of prison, they're forced straight into depression, and a lot of my guys fell into depression. And that's around money, that's around support, that's around, I guess, their self-worth, I guess. So that's the kind of things that I focus on at the moment.
Mm.
So,
and you do this, someone's asked a question about how you can measure impact without a lot of money. So you do this through like simple surveys?
Yeah, pretty much. At the moment, like with surveys is good, but you've got to have that human-centered design. It's not always, hey, I've got a survey, tick, 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 tick. I've got to be a part of these guys' lives, and like seriously, let's have that talk. You need that human. At the end of the day, social impact is about how to better society, and we're all humans at the end of the day living on Earth, and how can we help each other on a human level, not just everything ticks the boxes. I'm pretty sure the government's doing that right now. It's like, hey, this looks good on paper, let's tick the boxes. But at the end of the day, it all starts with small groups, like the people that's around you. Don't try to have this grand vision. Okay, I want to save the world, I want to save the planet. But let's just start with the people around you, the little things that you can actually have an effect on, the people that you can connect with, and it just like what happened with Ali and myself has a ripple effect. Start with the people around you. Yeah.
A few people have asked if you'll do some training with them.
Jump in my online sessions. Today I'm running a prison escape challenge. It's not just about prison, it's about escaping from society's prisons, and I'll explain to you what that means. So 5:30 Sydney time. So I'm running a prison escape challenge online. So you can DM me, send me an email, whatever. I'll add you to my Zoom link. So it'll be a live online prison escape challenge.
I'll send you this chat too, because a few people have asked about after COVID doing face-to-face. Others have asked around your funding. Are you government funded? Do you have philanthropic support, or is it all customer funding?
Everything I make goes straight back into the business. Obviously, I would like to go for that later on, but I haven't had any investments. I haven't borrowed any money. It's literally I've gone bare, even the equipment that I bought was whatever money I made, I put it back into the business.
Right.
Yeah. Later on, I am going for that funding, but at the moment, I've been self-funded.
So the people who train with you obviously pay you for that, like personal training. Okay, great. And a question from me actually, and it also relates to other not-for-profit social enterprises, any sort of thing that exists for social impact. There is competition around, like particularly for you, you're competing with private businesses. How do you, two-part question, how do you get cut through? And also, how do you approach the challenge you may have where people might be a bit cautious about training with former criminals?
100%. So competition-wise, fitness industry is a very cutthroat industry. There's a lot of competition out there, but I don't advertise myself as we're the best training out there. We want to be true to who we are, and it's okay. We're a bunch of guys who trained inside prison, and we love to train, but we want to make a difference to the world by helping others, and that's our point of difference. And people are coming on to train because of that. When you see a lot of other gyms and stuff, most of the products that are being offered are very similar. You're going to get to that stage where there are certain people who are a little bit more technical than you, but most gyms and establishments, what the products that they offer are pretty much very similar. And our differentiation is the social impact side. We want to give back to society, and there's not many fitness businesses doing that. So what's the second part again? And what people perceive about us.
Yes.
So we're very transparent with what we do. At the end of the day, we're not everyone's cup of tea. But like I said, we're here to break down that stereotyping that society has on us. And we want to create as much content as possible to kind of tell our story, who we are. Once they get to know us from the deep, from the inside, it's like, okay, we've committed a crime because, unfortunate circumstances. We're sometimes a product of the environment, but we're here to change, and that's the most important part. We're not doing the same thing. We're not still in the criminal game. We're trying to change our lives around, and I believe that society should give opportunities, whether they're from prison or whatever background that may be. The opportunity, we've got to create that opportunity for these guys. Yeah.
And then just back to your question, which Ali, I might start with you. So from Tanya, for someone wanting to switch into social impact from the tech sector, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, what experience qualifications do we need for the industry? How do we get taken seriously?
So it depends on the sort of organisation that you'd like to end up in, but for your own confidence, I guess, but also credibility in terms of understanding what social impact what it means and what it entails, I would sort of start looking at graduate certificate courses at CSI. So we offer, they're online now, Rhonda, you said? Yeah, so they're fully online, and they've got some core courses that you study, and you could do those 4 core courses and then dip your toes into understanding whether you wanted to carry on to a diploma or convert that into a master's. So I would start there. But as well, I think the key is that shift in mindset. So if you're working in tech, there's a lot of social impact work that can be done there in terms of the ethics around different coding. And I was reading an article the other day about 15 STEM careers that will exist in 2050 or that haven't been thought of yet. And they were talking about AI ethicists and VR ethicists. So just because something can be created doesn't mean that it's ethical to create it. So there's a lot of impact work. Again, it's shifting your lens of what impact work looks like. So I think the tech industry is rich with opportunities for social impact work. And if you wanted to upskill, then a graduate certificate's a great place to start.
Mm-hmm. Flicking back to you, Jo, Ashara is really keen to know if you've mapped ConFit's purpose with the Sustainable Development Goals. So she was suggesting number 8, decent work, number 10, reduced inequalities, and then number 3 of those, good health and well-being. She's captured probably all of them that apply to ConFit.
That's one of the tutorials we do in Kwon 1000.
Yeah, we learned that in Kwon 1000, and I was able to map that with a few of them actually. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And then someone else has suggested that you could do something in partnership with females exiting prison. Have you looked into that?
So our last assignment for Kwon 1000 was to create come up with a pitch and an idea, and my idea was this for female inmates. Later on, I realized that there's not that many female inmates that actually enjoy training. So I did not know about that. So yeah, I'm still looking for that female former inmate trainer. So I'm still looking for.
Okay, she's out there anywhere. Let Joe know. If anyone else has got any other questions, I think I've covered them all, and I apologise if I've missed any. There's a lot that have gone on. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Ali?
Yeah, so I would just like to say to anyone who is thinking of transitioning to social impact work, don't think of it as shifting into a completely different industry. That's what I'd say. That's the first myth about doing social impact work. You can do social impact work from wherever you are. So start where you are with that. Work out how you can think differently, start focusing on social gain as well as financial gain, if that's the kind of organisation you're in, and then see what you can do in the position that you're in, because oftentimes we think that we need to sort of jump ship to another sector in order to have a positive social impact, and we just know that's not the case. So the other great thing is that now, when the big consulting firms have social impact as one of their practice groups, you know that you're onto something. So there's so many opportunities. And contact us at CSI, and we're a resource as well. And we've got, contact us in the education team. If you're studying commerce, you can do Kwon 1000. So if you want to have a conversation, we're here. So happy to follow up if anyone's interested.
Yeah, we also have heaps of tools and resources that you might want to access. Hayley asked a question, and Ashara, I feel like Ashara is one of our moderators. She's lovely. She's answered the question around what newsletters, organisations you recommend we follow. And I would agree. So CSI, obviously, I'm an advocate. Pro Bono, Social Change Central, Ethical Jobs is really great. Social Ventures Australia, awesome. There's heaps of great organisations doing awesome work, and they have amazing content from the intro level right through to the more advanced. Just sign up and read away and come to webinars like this. Joe, is there anything else that you wanted to add? I really appreciate you coming today too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Just before I go, look, if anyone ever comes up to you for a hand, don't brush them off. You never know. Please. Yeah, you never know. And also, guys, if you want to check out the Business Think website, there's a nice little article that just got launched today. And it's got great things about CSI and what UNSW has done. So if you can check that, if you want to put that on the chat, Rhonda.
I will. It's the UNSW, one of UNSW's newsletters basically, and it's very detailed, and it's just a great thing to read. And read that article about Joe. Here, I'll do it right now.
There's a great question from Angela, who's a current tutor in Con 1000. That would be great to ask Joe. Just come through. As a current Con 1000 tutor, what advice could you share, Joe, on how to connect and encourage students?
How to connect and encourage students? I guess like more than just learning about it, get them to go do something outside. Like I said, just help someone like that's next to you. And that's how social impact starts. You know, everyone thinks social impact is something that's going to be really big and grand, but it isn't. It's what you can offer.
And in our conversation, Joe, when you came up to me, I actually didn't have, I had ideas for what ConFit could become, but I didn't know if I could offer you your next step, but I knew that I knew people who could. So I think as well, having that social impact mindset is about connecting.
Exactly.
That's it at its heart. It's about.
That's right. It's human connection.
Yeah. So that's what I would say to people as well, that look for the opportunity to connect someone with someone else if you think that could have a positive impact.
Yeah, definitely.
I was wrapping up, but we have another really good question, which I think we'll finish with to Joe. It's from Selena. What's your path forward and what are your top 3 wishes?
Path forward. Well, first I'd like to graduate from university. That's happening, I think, next year, first semester of next year. My top 3 wishes, I really want to scale ConFit around Australia and help not just former inmates come from New South Wales, but from every state, because at the moment, the recidivism rate in Australia is 54.2%, which means more than half, like more than 1 in 2 will return back to prison within the first 2 years. And it's not just costing people's, not their lives, but livelihood. Sorry, thank you for saving me. Thank you. Not their livelihood, but it's costing the government about 113,000 per inmate every year. That's taxpayers' money, and you know there's over 44,000 inmates in Australia. And I worked it out to be like it's in the billions of dollars each year that we're spending on incarcerating inmates. So we try to reduce that rate down and use that money for something better, right? On education programs, whatever that may be. So that is what one of my biggest wishes is, to reduce that recidivism rate and just to make society a better place, I guess. The other 2, I don't know. I'm a simple guy, you know.
That's a pretty big first one though, so that's all 3. Thank you so much. Everyone has seemed to really enjoy it through the chat, which I will send you. And I thank everyone for attending, and particularly to you, Joe, and to Ali for coming along to the webinar and presenting.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll end it here. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.